Superficial scribblings on sexism, superficial scribblings on life. Who the fuck needs criticism? And I can always be right. Hello, something guys and gals. This is Something Guy 912. I have in my disposal a very special episode for you today because while most of these are just tackling one small anecdote of society today, this time I'll be able to metaphorically kill 3 different birds with a stone. Not only will I be destroying articles talking about pseudo-sexism, not only will I be able to show you how awful Polygon is, but I will also be able to once again show the hypocrisy and contempt of Anita Sarkeesian post-Tropes v. Women. If you haven't heard it already, Vidcon just happened recently, and Sargon, being the shit poster that he is, decided to attend a panel with Anita present about harassment, which makes what I'm about to say next even more ironic. So he sits there and watches Anita's panel quietly and respectfully, only for Anita to notice him amongst the tiny crowd. Supposedly only a third of the seats were filled, and basically, with no irony, harasses him in person on a stage, basically at a pedestal of privilege. Remember, power plus privilege, completely unprovoked to begin with. What does Polygon have to say about this? Well, of course Anita was completely justified to do that. And not only that, say that what she did was a sharp criticism of all the people who have made fun of her and ridiculed her for her stupid arguments, while she built a bubble around herself to avoid it at all costs until she couldn't build a bubble around reality. This article is particularly long, but I figured that I'd give you a wallop to read so you can binge on some Minecraft or whatever you do. So enjoy Anita Sarkeesian's astounding garbage human moment by Colin Campbell. A phone camera is trained on Anita Sarkeesian as she prepares to speak on a panel. In footage later posted online, the camera wobbles slightly. Its setting is on high zoom. It follows her every move. Ooh, spicy. You're really setting the scene of a stalker, aren't you? Except that she's in a public place, she's a very public person, and everyone can see the person holding the camera. But do go on. After so many public appearances, Sarkeesian has grown accustomed to speaking in front of a few hundred people, but today she feels a certain intimidation. A crowd of her most vociferous critics, including YouTubers, sit together in the front rows, their phones pointed at her. I wonder why. Is it because if they didn't show up, literally one person would be watching an adulation of her? If she was really concerned with YouTubers adamant of her opinions being present, she wouldn't have shown up to begin with. But yes, we still have to play this idea that someone who sets themselves up as a victim at every turn is also a brave culture warrior. The camera carefully follows her as she acknowledges her co-panelists, as she checks her surroundings. Then she looks directly into the camera. She looks at the man holding the camera, sitting in the front row. J'accuse! How could you, Sargon? Did you get her permission to film her in a public space? Carl Benjamin is a British YouTube personality in his late 30s. He has spoken vociferously many times over many years about Sarkeesian and her work. Some of his videos are thumbnailed with ludicrously photoshopped imagery of Sarkeesian. At the time of writing, his Twitter page is bannered with a picture of Sarkeesian. It could be that Sarkeesian called him a certain word at his face while she was on a pedestal about harassment. It wouldn't be that he was pointing out her hypocrisy or anything. As for him talking about Sarkeesian, the most recent time he has ever talked about her was in the Bell Tolls for Z, where he briefly mentioned how Sarkeesian was confident in saying that her trope series was all about social justice and not for video games, after officially finishing the project, which I still doubt to this day. And the last one after that was the Trump Salt Mining Incorporation, which again didn't just talk about Sarkeesian, but a number of feminists butthurt that Trump won over 7 months ago. And he did make 2 brief videos about Sarkeesian during his very early years, before he went to generally shitting on feminists in general. So to say that Sargon was specifically the person getting at Sarkeesian is hyperbolic to say the least. Benjamin has made his name dismissing her feminist documentary work such as Tropes v. Women in video games, which details the cultural biases of video games. Actually, my first entourage into Sargon of Akkad was at the height of Gamergate, which was around late 2014, something that Anita and many feminists dismissed just as equally as we dismissed her work. Also, documentaries are used to recount the history of someone or something, which is most definitely what Anita was not doing. He is a hero for many in the hate group Gamergate, a rough assemblage of misogynists, racists, conspiracy theorists, and right-wing ideologues who have spent years harassing Sarkeesian and anyone who publicly supports her work. If I had a nickel for every fucking time someone generalized Gamergate as this hive mind of bigots, I'd be able to buy out and gentrify every minority's homes. Also, I don't get how being right-wing or a conspiracy theorist is synonymous with being a racist or misogynist, but when you paint someone as evil with no evidence, you don't need to do any legwork on your part to address their points, right? Most of his YouTube videos follow standard reactionary protocols, excoriating the supposed evils of political correctness, shady liberal elites, and the media. Oh yeah, supposed evils of political correctness, whereas your analysis of Gamergate is right on the money. It wasn't like that very demonization of Gamergate was one evil of political correctness or the media, could it? His most frothy content is preserved for feminism, a hot topic for men who feel afraid and threatened by progressives who they dismiss as the regressive left. He has more than 600,000 subscribers on YouTube. He makes more than $5,000 a month on Patreon. Am I hearing just a bit of jealousy from you, Campbell's social justice soup? I'm sure you don't make a lot of money pretending to be a fucking journalist on here, so you got to get your heels hot on someone who's making it bigger than you, or even someone who is ideologically opposed. Also, women and minorities are afraid of progressives and the regressive left too, but keep acting like sex and races are conglomerates like the racists you are. Today, he is surrounded by a group of his supporters who have planned to come in force and take the front seats of this Vidcon panel, which is focused on the lives of women online. I'm pretty sure it was more of convenience that Sargon had come across some of his ideological allies, rather than some kind of scheme to ruin Sarkeesian's panel. Also, how exactly do a bunch of shitposters, ideologically opposed to Anita, take the front seat on a panel of someone who supposedly is a big fucking deal? It makes me think that Anita did this to get back in the limelight once more. The panel's first question drops. It's about why feminism, online and in games, is an issue worthy of discussion. Pretty good question. Let's see how Anita dodges said question, as she does everything else, now that she isn't in a place where a bunch of talking heads are going to spew confirmation bias back at her. Sarkeesian notes Benjamin's presence and begins speaking. If you Google my name on YouTube, you get shitheads like this dude who are making these dumbass videos, she says. They just say the same shit over and over again. I hate to give you attention because you're a garbage human. These dudes just making endless videos that go after every feminist over and over again is a part of the issue of why we have to have these conversations. Wow, Anita, that is harassment coming from a place of privilege. I mean, you are literally talking over him with a mic. But what I find very amusing about her response is that this is perhaps the first time that I've ever seen Anita exasperated over not being able to sink back into her echo chamber. Every talk she has been in, she's been in a place where there would be no one else to argue against her established ideals, and now that she's got to get out of the box, she can't take the heat and is getting pissed as a result. Not to mention, she did this completely because Sargon happened to be present and was willing to listen and believe what she had to say. And she still couldn't humble herself. Fuck me, Sarkeesian. You really are a fucking shithead, you know that? I held no shame saying that to your face or online because you bring it on yourself. You took a media that people loved, decided to invent a problem in it through lies, conning people, and stealing content, being public about your bigotry towards others, and patronizing towards women, and then come back around with crocodile tears about how much of a victim you are. Go fuck yourself, Anita. You have no one else to blame for your predicament but you. The sooner you realize that, the more productive we can come to finding a recourse to your shitty arguments. The crowd gives her a positive response, with some whoops and cheers. On the front rows, Benjamin is ready to rock back and forth, as if they are watching a comedy show. He yells back that he be allowed to debate with her, but she won't debate him. She understands that he's not in the least bit interested in what she has to say. Yet Sargon is totally a social justice warrior because he made a video demanding Anita be kicked out of Vidcon, despite he was doing that to show the hypocrisy of social justice types like Anita. And Anita doesn't want to debate her arguments with other people because if she did, she would be defeated. She knows her arguments are shit. So if she keeps close to her hug boxes and insulates herself from outside sources, her arguments are preserved. But they'll keep picking regardless until Anita blows up like she did just now. I would love to get Anita in a room without her script, without her safe space to protect her, and just try to argue the points she's made in previous videos without a fucking teleprompter telling her what to say, because I guarantee you that she would just choke up and not actually be able to argue for them. Dark motives? Ooh, spooky. I bet Sargon came to that event to make Anita look bad, even though Anita is the only one who could do that. After his humiliation, Benjamin posted a video complaining about Sarkeesian's comments and pointing out that they contravened Vidcon policy. He also repeated his lamentation that she is avoiding debating him and said that Sarkeesian was guilty of smearing male gamers. Still, there is a silver lining for him. At the time of writing, the video has been viewed more than 400,000 times. Well, he has over 600k subscribers, so most of them have watched the video, including me. I don't know how that's somehow a compliment on his behalf, unless he's Onision, where he can barely scrape 100,000 views, but has nearly 2 million subscribers. Sargon wasn't even really complaining, but using social justice tactics to point out the hypocrisy of Anita being on a podium talking down to people while being at a panel about harassment. Benjamin often points out that he asks his followers not to harass the subjects of his videos, but that doesn't stop them assaulting Sarkeesian with vile insults. In the last few days, the usual litany of misspelled, crude, and violent insults have spiked, and I'm sure you have plenty evidence of this, right? And that they did it entirely on behalf of Sargon and said it passionately with bated breath. Oh, you don't? Well, I guess the story wouldn't be nearly as juicy if that didn't happen, huh? Also, content creators are not liable for what their followers do, unless they suggest them do something like, "Everyone in the chat say Alex is a stupid nigger!" She's had to live with this stuff for years, ever since she launched Feminist Frequency, which produced a series of YouTube documentaries investigating video gaming's history of propagating misogynistic tropes and advancing a broadly patriarchal view of society. And the prevailing narrative has always been, it was never on me. It wasn't like Feminist Frequency was some cloistered idiot who made some obviously poor videos on critiquing video games. She's a very noted con artist who shackled people's money under the presumption of using it for a series, and through huge delays, and proving that she faked gameplay footage and stole it from others, gave herself that notoriety, yet who wanted everyone else to treat her like an innocent woman getting mauled by the wolves. As for demonstrating gaming's history of propagating misogynistic tropes, remember that she only did this for the narrative itself, so of course gaming would have a history of that, but whether it actually does or doesn't is now thrown in the waste bin because she didn't want to tackle the subject with any propriety on her part. Her work has brought serious feminist ideas to a broad audience of gamers, including people working in the game industry, many of whom were previously ignorant of such notions. Or maybe these people had these notions because if they didn't, they would be bullied out of the industry. What about the dude who had to cuck himself for making some pro-Gamergate tweets when The Last Night came out? Zoe Quinn got super jealous as someone who was ideologically opposed to her was making a game that was infinitely more interesting and realized in her glorified Facebook survey post, and wanted to stand on her pedestal with her white knights in tow about how much of a bully he is, despite being a bully herself. The series was initially crowdfunded through Kickstarter with a target of $8,000. It raised more than $150,000, increasing the scope of the project, which ran for 2 seasons. And that scope was a project that was 4 years late, with what I could say is barely 70% of the entire promised work even done, after supposedly finishing the project. No marked improvements on lighting, camera work, or even research for that matter, with gameplay footage that was directly cut from Let's Plays, so my question at this point is, where the fuck did the money go to? But of course, who gives a fuck about that? It's only about the principle of the matter. Since she began her work, video games have seen a rise in the number of positive women and minority protagonists, and a decrease in the tropes she discusses, such as weak, sexually attractive damsels in distress. Feminist Frequency has demonstrably made a difference. You know what? I highly doubt that. I highly doubt any of these tropes exist because they are poorly demonstrated and require an ideological pinhole to believe, and I highly doubt that women and minorities have ever been pushed out of the medium because of its inherent bigotry, rather than just simply not enjoying the medium to begin with. Even if these tropes do exist, I don't care because they are part of a work of fiction and don't actually reinforce negative values upon anyone. If you suppose they do, then you must also say that any game depicting violence will then cause people to be violent, which makes you no fucking different than Jack Thompson. Her scholarly take on video games enrages large numbers of men, many of them young. Well, when you demonize a majority demographic of a medium and try to supplant and usurp a platform they enjoy with toxic ideological rhetoric, a lot of them are going to be a bit miffed by that. Also, if they are young, supposedly children, why should you, much less Anita, take them seriously? But we should take childish death threats seriously, shouldn't we? She has received death threats. Her social media streams have received countless slurs, rape threats, and insults. Benjamin and his supporters claim they just want to engage with her, but in a video released by a fellow right-wing YouTuber, it becomes clear that there are other motives at play. And that right-wing YouTuber in that right-wing video might be, you have a link, or are you just going to make a broad claim? It's like if you don't have any fucking journalistic integrity to even provide any source for your claims, nor take your own political ideology out of news stories in general. It's like journalists these days treat their platform like their own blog post, where they can run their mouth and treat it like fucking fact. What a fucking disgrace you are. I took a journalism class in high school, and I learned the principle of reporting the news as factually and non-biased as possible, unless it's an editorial. Stop treating every fucking news platform like it's your own editorial, shithead.
Some victim bullshit.
Yeah, that's one way to paint Anita as some little doe getting ran over by the car of misogyny. Dave Cullen lounges on what appears to be a bed in a hotel room, pointing a camera at himself. He looks tired and slightly pleased with himself. He is an ally of Benjamin's, a fellow YouTuber who makes a full-time living feeding the internet's appetite for masculine fear and hurt. His Patreon makes around $3,000 a month. His YouTube page has more than 240,000 subscribers. Point out someone's overall earnings on Patreon, combined with a subscriber count. Do I see an iteration of what the WSJ did to PewDiePie, or is it just me? It makes me think that there's more of a financial incentive against these people, and are trying to punch them down because they themselves are losing money. Just a thought. Although this Dave Cullen guy could be the alt-right YouTuber Campbell mentioned earlier, but why he didn't mention him by name first is beyond me. Also, Dave Cullen is known as Computing Forever on YouTube, someone who, while somewhat ideologically disposed to me, I personally don't like a lot of his videos, as he whinges a lot about YouTube conspiracy theories and the like. But the difference between me not liking a content creator and Anita not liking a content creator is that I don't go out of my way to defame that person unless I'm regarding a video in specific, nor do I try to build a soundproof wall around him. He's entitled to whatever the fuck video he wants to make, as does Sarkeesian, or a neo-Nazi or Red Army communist, but you better have some skin in the game if you're going to make such unbelievably stupid claims about a media. He was there, he says, at the Vidcon Sarkeesian session. As he speaks, he claims that the first 3 rows were taken up by allies. The allies have co-opted an internet term of derision to describe themselves, shitlords. They are generally identified by their hostility to progressives and to social justice warriors. Another common theme with shitlords is that they only gain power if you give them your salty, autistic responses like Miss Sarkeesian did. But please keep feeding the troll, you moral crusaders. He goes on to talk about how these allies coordinated among themselves at the event. We carefully organized this so that on one side of the audience, we could all make up the top 3 rows, he says. We would all be sitting there filming it, he adds, before naming several allies. Anita spoke, and they were asking about why it's important to still have women talking about sexism or some victim bullshit in video games. He recounts Sarkeesian's comments. Okay, I honestly don't get what you're trying to aim with bringing up this rogue element in their mix. Again, if this is true, it's kind of indicative of how little people actually care about Sarkeesian's talking points if her enemies can sit in the front row with ease. He repeatedly claims a group is there to engage with Sarkeesian, but later he says something very different. We had a blast with this. It was such an adrenaline high to be there in the situation, the shitpost, in this trolling kind of way. He goes on to claim there was no malice in their actions and that it was playful. noticed that they were able to piss her off merely by just being present at the event, and that they didn't harass or pull some really silly questions at her. So my basis is that they wanted to engage in conversation, but because Sarkeesian was so bothered that she couldn't shy away from her opponents, their very existence is a call of shitlording. People are memeing Sargon as well as calling themselves garbage humans, ironically making the insult lose its initial power, much like how the term shitlord is used as a form of endearment, which basically validates the phrase, words only have power if you give them it. Polygon sent his comment to Sarkeesian, asking for a response. She responded via email. Hearing the honesty in that comment is weirdly almost kind of validating, because of course we know it's true. We've always known it's true, that for them this is a kind of game, but they constantly deny it. What exactly did this guy expose? They're just having a good time and she's the one pissed in the sad corner because they called her out on her bullshit? Also, I love that you can just have a neat back and forth with your ideological allies. Hey, psst, do you believe in the world is flat? Oh, yes I do! Let's talk about how the world is flat and how people who believe the world is round are trying to oppress us. They're playing for fun. For them, it's a thrill to use the power they have under patriarchy to try to keep women in their place, to try to intimidate or silence women who dare to speak out and assert their humanity and their right to exist as full human beings in these spaces. I could use that very fucking paragraph to explain your actions, Miss Sarkeesian, assuming that this is a quote taken from the email. For Anita, it's a thrill to use the power they have under matriarchy to try to keep men in their place, pedestal, mic stand above someone, to try to intimidate or silence men who dare speak out and assert their humanity and their right to exist as full human beings in these spaces. Call them sexist on principle, demonize them for characteristics they can't control. But of course, power plus privilege, despite that Anita literally is using her power and privilege to talk down to someone who has never harassed her, demonstrate that she isn't being harassed, and called not to harass her, even if I think most of the threats that she does receive are clear bait to trigger her. They don't give a damn about the actual impact they're having on people's lives. It's a sport, an adrenaline rush, but for me and for other women who are targeted by cyber mobs who endure ongoing campaigns of harassment, it's not fun. It's scary. It's traumatic. Oh, woe is you! But I have to ask, didn't you remove comments on your videos on YouTube? Don't you have a block button on Twitter? Didn't you say yourself that you just don't care about said threatening tweets you receive on a talk? That's the most absurd thing about your fascination with harassment, this fetish you have with it. You frame every threat you get like it's a picture of the Mona Lisa or an Oscar on your shelf that you look at and admire about how much of a victim you are. Yet it's you who put these threats on such a high level of importance that I can only say the onus is on you. I don't give a shit what anonymous dude tells me on the internet. If he tells me to KYS, I'll ironically say will do and go on with my fucking life. Because unless they actually carry out their threats, which none of them have, there isn't any cause for alarm. You have to be so far removed from the reality of what you're doing to engage in this behavior and call it playful trolling. This is harassment, pure and simple, with the goal of trying to scare and silence women who speak out against sexism in our culture. Anita, if you are scared and silenced by some shitposters sitting at a panel that they have every right to go to, and women are equally silenced by that, that is entirely on you. I mean, come the fuck on, Anita. Do you not realize that these statements you are making are inadvertently giving people a low opinion of women as fragile and weak to some stupid tweets and comments, much less the existence of people that have spoke out against your hypocrisy and arguments, and clearly their presence didn't silence you because you had the fucking mic stand, you had the presence, and you used your pedestal to talk down to someone for being present at an event about harassment by harassing them, you fucking stupid hypocritical bitch. But remember, power plus privilege, but I guess women don't ever get power or privilege in any case, right? Because if they did, feminism wouldn't have a fucking reason to exist to begin with. Colin's video includes footage of a group of supporters in an animated mood after the event, celebrating while at the same time expressing outrage that Benjamin had been called out. One of them jokes that he watches LGBT videos online. He likes the lesbian ones best. He laughs at his own joke. Oh, what a horrible disgrace of a man, making a joke at the expense of gay people. What a fucking homophobe. I think the people there were animated because Anita showed how full of shit she truly is when the echo chamber in the hug box gets shown off and she can't escape her detractors, and now have an endless spool of video to present Anita as a walking contrarian she is. But of course, Anita isn't accountable for any wrongdoing done to her, or what she says, or what she does, because women are weak, women are worthless, right out of the fucking horse's mouth!
A pile of shitlords.
Designed a lovely bunch of hypocrites.
Vidcon has a code of conduct listed on its website which requests that speakers are treated with respect. It asks that attendees refrain from activity that causes excessive discomfort to our attendees or guests. It adds, pranks often make for some great videos, but it makes us really sad when they are emotionally or physically hurtful, so don't do that. If we hear about anyone pranking in ways that are disruptive to the well-being of our guests and our attendees, there's a pretty strong chance it will get the prankster kicked out. Okay, good. Now tell me how Anita's actions are somehow justified, despite clearly breaking policy, because unless you don't, you are creating a double standard. If one person can make someone unwelcome with impunity, then no one is welcome here. So as far as we know, none of those who trolled Sarkeesian were kicked out. Polygon contacted Vidcon seeking further clarification. We received an auto reply that the team is currently on vacation. Later, a statement was released, which included the following. The following refrain by Tom and Hank Green is them basically apologizing that Sarkeesian got butthurt that the detractors were present at a panel that they paid for to visit. Also, I love that people could just troll others by just being within eye contact of them. Next, you're going to tell me that Sargon trolled Sarkeesian by actively avoiding her, aren't you? It is difficult to imagine that this group of people, who are aware that their channels have been base camps for years of harassment on some of our panelists, did not realize that their arriving early to fill up the 3 front rows of a panel was going to be intimidating. Hank, I do not give a shit if Anita had to be present in the face of people who are detractors of her content. If Anita is the kind of person to stand on her principles, which she isn't, she wouldn't give a damn about them being there, because if anything, they are giving her more attention by doing so. They gave the olive branch, willing to hear her out, and what did she do with it? She burned it to the fucking ground, because how dare you expect her to be challenged on her viewpoints? Also, being intimidated is not an excuse to be vitriolic to other people in public to their face, no matter how intimidating someone may be behind the monitor screen. In any case, it looked like intentional intimidation to most people in attendance, and the panelists were understandably on edge throughout the discussion. It looked like intentional intimidation by mere facet of them just being there. Any more insightful things you want to point out, Hank? Because I could just as easily said that Anita intentionally inflicted physical harm at Sargon by calling him a garbage human. And that would have just as much validity, you goalpost-shifting coward. The statement went on to acknowledge that although Sarkeesian's insults did contravene policy, there was a wider issue at play. It added that a Vidcon official apologized to Sarkeesian for not having been more aware of and active in understanding the situation before the event, which resulted in her being subjected to a hostile environment that she had not signed up for. Please, cut yourselves to the great bully Sarkeesian. How dare you not take her feelings into account as she's beating your fucking skull in with a bat while going, "You're harassing me!" Did you take Sargon's situation into account? Or are you being actively ignorant, or intentionally ignorant, of his side of the story? Because if you did, you face more harassment by Sarkeesian while simultaneously claiming harassment on her part. Hank, these actions you have taken will show people that you have a double standard when it comes to enforcing policy, and turn them away from Vidcon. I hope you lose a lot of money over this ideological bullshit. Sarkeesian says that Vidcon security was increased for panels she attended later in the event. They offered her the chance to step down from those sessions, but she declined, arguing that she did not want the trolls to feel like they had swords on the sky of victory. Well, finally Sarkeesian tried in some regard to stand her own principles, despite making sure that there is a big safety net against people who dare exist in her vicinity. Like, imagine for a moment how cloistered you must be that actually being witness to those who disagree with you or critique you is grounds for needing extra security. You might as well start wearing Princess Peach's regalia, Anita, because you are the epitome of the damsel in distress. I had to go out on another panel knowing that my harassers were in the audience, filming me for nefarious reasons, and there was nothing I could do about it, she said. They were filming you because they wanted to talk about what you had said, without interrupting you as they were filming. In essence, they were trying to have a dialogue against the things you said. And of course, you couldn't have that, because how dare people disagree with you in good faith. But good job, Anita. Now people will use video of you calling people garbage humans to show how patently full of shit you are. Like as if that wasn't already the fucking case. She hopes that VidCon and other events will become more aware of organized trolling. Trolling, quote-unquote, is a bunch of people ideologically opposed to her attending her event. Keep that in mind. When push comes to shove, conventions like VidCon should stand up and support women and other marginalized folks who are harassed. Why should I have to go out there in this toxic environment? Why aren't these men punished for creating that environment? After all, this is a conference about online video culture attended primarily by YouTubers, and it's no secret that YouTube has an incredibly toxic culture. Yes, Anita, despite that the people who were organized in that trolling were women and, so to speak, marginalized groups. You conveniently erase them for the sake of the argument. This is exactly what these people are talking about when they mention the soft bigotry of low expectations. You set up women and minorities to be so fucking weak and fragile that they can't dare face their opponents in discussion, despite that Francesca Ramsey of all people managed to take a shot shoulder to shoulder with Andy Warski, and Lacey Green and Sargon managed to hash out their differences and bond together as human beings. And that you set yourself up as so weak that even when you clearly have the protection of Hank and Tom Green's ignorant side of the discussion, even when you clearly have broken policy because of fifis, it's justified because you set the bar so fucking low for yourself that murdering puppies will be your next call of action. And again, she wants men to be punished for being present at a panel that they have every right to go and paid for to begin with. It's critical that events like VidCon recognize that and implement policies that prevent that toxicity from bleeding over into the event. Hey Anita, maybe before you demand toxicity from bleeding over into an event, you yourself demonstrate that you aren't bleeding toxicity into your audience yourself, you fucking hypocrite. Now YouTube creator who makes videos that serve to target and harass individuals should be allowed to attend, and anyone who uses material filmed at a convention to harass individuals should be blacklisted from future events. Well then, Nina, by that metric, that broad yet specific metric, you yourself shouldn't be allowed because your little Tropes Feed Women series have served to target and harass gamers as a bunch of misogynists based primarily on the mediums they play, and that alone. Also, does that film material also apply to those caught in harassment themselves? Because that would mean that, again, you are the very culprit of what you claim that these people did, even though all they did was record, and you ran your fucking mouth and demonstrated that you go beyond the bottom of the fucking barrel of callous things to do and say to people. Bad faith. When you haven't already implied bad motives from people with none, make sure to hone that in. Polygon asked Sarkeesian for a response to Benjamin's oft-repeated claim, echoed by many controversial YouTubers, that he is anti-harassment. She replied with a well-known gif showing cartoon characterizations of Batman, Robin, and Green Arrow sharing a mirthful moment. Sure, Anita, you laugh and scoff, yet you have never even addressed any criticism, less any video, on behalf of Sargon of Garbage, but I can pull 2 clips from Sargon where he actively says to his audience not to harass you. While that won't necessarily stop his audience from doing so, he isn't responsible for what his audience does. Are you going to say that you are responsible for what your audience has done? Because by that note, I could just as easily pull up plenty of threads of people on your side harassing other people. But in due diligence, here are the 2 clips of Sargon actively encouraging people not to harass you.
These are the most relevant videos I could find on my channel regarding Anita Sarkeesian, and in none of them do I incite, harass, or do anything other than try to dissuade people from doing anything to Anita. I want you to watch all of these. I will list them in the channel description with all of my other sources, and I want you, Hank, to sit down and watch them. If you can find anything in these videos that is not legitimate criticism, you can let me know. Because I know I have done nothing but discourage people from harassing Anita Sarkeesian.
At the end of the conference, a question and answer session prompted some audience members to line up. In a blog entry posted after the event, Sarkeesian wrote that she is generally wary of such sessions because they tend to attract bad faith questions. Unfortunately, VidCon was no exceptions. Bad faith questions like, do you believe any of the stuff you say, or why do you act as though women are the only ones getting harassed? Questions too hard for Anita to answer seriously, so she either decides to kick the person out or go on a tangent about some garbage human. One man stood up and asked Sarkeesian if she truly believes in the work she does. The question was declined. Sarkeesian is often portrayed by reactionary critics as a cynical manipulator of public opinion for financial gain. Well, no fucking shit, Polygon. I mean, you have looked at all the comprehensive videos about how Anita deliberately stole Let's Play content for her Trump series, despite getting a shit ton of money, and that her cries of harassment were the very reason she even got a huge lump sum of money to begin with, didn't you? Or do you think this kind of claim was just pulled out of the sky, despite how congruent it is with Anita's behavior as of late?
Another man stood up to ask, why do you guys act like only women face harassment online? The claim that women are the only victims of harassment, so far as we could tell, has never been made by Sarkeesian. When he was booed by the audience and asked to sit down, the man claimed that he was being harassed.
Well, Sarkeesian didn't think that she called Sargon a garbage human straight to his face was harassing, nor did you think so it just makes me think that you guys don't think men face harassment. I mean, look how Sarkeesian blew up in Bookie's face when he explained how he, being a straight cis man with privilege, was harassed with death threats and a hit out on his address. She was virulent that he would take up so much time to explain a question that wasn't even asked on the same day. Also, there are plenty of statistics that show that overall, men experience more harassment than women, but even more so than that, experience different kinds of harassment than women. So the idea of harassment being this women's issue only is absurd at best and damaging at worst to both the pride of women and the dignity of men.
In later sessions, Vidcon described to moderate all questions at Sarkeesian's panels. On the question of debating her critics, Sarkeesian offers this explanation.
Ooh, I can't wait for her excuse as to why she doesn't have to face her detractors.
My position is rooted in an understanding of what bell hooks has succinctly referred to as imperious white supremacist capitalist patriarchy. It sometimes requires a lot of unpacking to come to a basic understanding of this.
What the fuck kind of answer was that? That was the most politician-esque way of dodging a question entirely. Okay, so even if we are to assume that idea is true, the patriarchy is pretty shit, considering that you are up on a panel with the creators of Vidcon to the defense of you being an asshole. Also, Anita, did you forget to mention that some black guy and Bunty King were present at the event where you called Sargon a garbage human, and their complexion is very the opposite of white, so we can rule out white supremacists. As for capitalists, you've participated in that capitalist formula, shilling for donations with your crocodile tears, so I don't understand why you're bothered by it. And imperious is completely irrelevant to debate as a topic, but in the end, it was a complete non-answer.
You may need to take classes or read books that illuminate how systems of power have functioned throughout the history of our culture before you come to understand and accept that these systems actually do exist and impact people's daily lives, but they do.
Sure, Anita, but what about addressing the criticisms levied at you? Are you saying that because you were so enlightened by your bell hooks reading on how Marxism can work in capitalist societies, that in order for anyone to criticize you, that they too need to drink the Kool-Aid first? Because that's what that sounds like to me. Also, even if the systemic oppression is true, extreme claims still require extreme evidence. If I say that I can juggle 3 running chainsaws while masturbating, and you don't believe me, it's not then my right to say, well, power structures have enabled you to think that no such chainsaw juggling masturbators could exist, rather than proving to you that I can very well do that.
Institutionalized sexism and racism are real, and their effect on our lives is tremendous. Meanwhile, their position that these things don't really exist is the dominant position in this culture. It doesn't require all this scaffolding to establish.
Maybe it's the dominant position because it's the actual reality of the matter. Are you seriously going to insist to me that there is this institutionalized sexism on you, when you have an institution that is afraid to enforce their own policies on you when you clearly break them? Or to say that there is an institution of racism when shitlords of all stripes came to your event, yet you conveniently erased them from your mind and handpicked the white males in the audience. To me, this whole institution game is just another version of the God of the Gaps, or even the unfalsifiable hypothesis.
Sure, there could be sexist and racist out there, but since you broadly refer to them tangentially to not addressing criticism, you don't have to actually do the legwork to point out the specific parts of institutionalized isms. You think this line of reasoning will work with trying to dismantle radical Islam? You just make broad general claims of oppression in the Middle East, rather than point out the laws that are in effect and the religious doctrine that enshrines women not to drive, not to walk out of the home without a male near them, and be sentenced to death for being raped? No, it wouldn't. So unless you actually have a law that you can name that discriminates you over me, you ain't got shit. They can skip right to bashing my ideas, and their followers will eat it up no matter what I say. Actually, Anita, if you even took an ounce of trying to address even one thing that anyone has said, there would be people on your side. But since you take this stance where your points are absolute and not to be discussed, people are turned off by your inability to look outside of your own echo chamber. You treat everything like you say like as if it's true. And that's an unproductive and narcissistic way to talk to people. Your bully pulpit and your ego will catch up with you. It's already showing. Leona Kay and Lacey Green don't like your shitty tactics, and they're ideologically on your side. It's a losing game. I'm not going to change anyone's minds debating with any of them. More importantly, I shouldn't have to debate the fact that I'm a human being who deserves basic respect. And in fact, that is in itself a core issue of all this. How degrading and exhausting it is just to have to keep arguing for, and fighting for, and begging for your own humanity. Anita, you are arguing for your basic humanity by saying that video games are sexist and the gamers are sexist for playing them. You are arguing for special treatment based on circumstances you can't control because you know your arguments are shit. That's entirely the reason why you don't like debates. That's why you got in a fury over seeing your greatest enemies. You had to get out of the echo chamber for a minute, and you got fucking burned for it. But that is the reality of anyone who comes into a media making extreme claims. If you're going to demonize an entire demographic without any proper evidence, expect them to demonize you back. Nut up or shut up, Anita. Polygon attempted to contact Benjamin via his Twitter page and an email address, but have yet to receive a reply. Ha! Yeah, I'm fucking sure you did. Like how Tom and Hank Green contacted Sargon of Garbage about his side of the table. Oh, wait, that's right, they didn't. And you personally, Mr. Campbell's social justice soup, with you propping up Benji as this big misogynist troll without any insight on his end, really doesn't warrant him to just open up his asshole so you can pick him further, dickwad. One of the kinder things. Yeah, after all the false shit-slinging, after all the ad nauseum about patriarchy and one-sided harassment on this shitty hit piece publication, now we can look to the brighter side of it all. In the aftermath of the Vidcon confrontation, Gamergate-centric corners of the internet swelled with outrage at Sarkeesian's comments, as they should because Anita has demonstrated that she doesn't care about any points she purports to stand on, lending credence to the question, do you believe any of the things you have said? And more importantly, are angry that Anita is using this power plus privilege to bully others into capitulation of her rigid mindset, lest they be thrown to the wolves of third-wave feminists, getting their problem glasses and Samsungs on for a slacktivist showdown. In his video, Cullen complained, what has he, Benjamin, done to deserve this? He's just sitting there. She's the one talking. She started attacking him in this context. Fucking unbelievable. This abuse is acceptable, so these guest speakers are able to insult a paid audience member? I'd love to know, because even if Sargon supposedly harassed Anita online, or encouraged others to harass her online, doesn't then validate her to do the same. It'd be like the victim of a rape, using their experience of rape to justify raping another person, or in the case of third-wave feminism, demonize all men as potential rapists. Sarkeesian says it's clear that Benjamin and his entourage were there to intimidate her. He had come with several others, and together they took up roughly the first 2 rows. Of course he wanted to be seen, and I knew, because he was filming the panel, that he would use it to harass me, and potentially drive harassment to my co-panelists. So I used the first question as an opportunity to let them and the audience know what was happening. You let your audience know there is no level you will stoop to desperately try to defeat your opponents without addressing one contingent point they made against the ideas you are proposing.
You demonstrated that harassment is a subjective and flexible definition when convenient for the offense, and that it is completely one-sided, and that you have no basis of talking down to anyone else about being a bigoted, hateful spirit when your entire livelihood has been to treat women in this Western Hemisphere like as if they are second-class citizens through and through. I got the tweets for it. I got you bloviating about it ad nauseum. So don't take this as me and misinterpreting your viewpoints, Anita, unless you actually don't believe them. And this is a clever ruse to get the professional victim limelight back on you once more. I'll bet my left foot for the latter.
I certainly have no regrets, and I definitely did not flip out as some folks are trying to falsely describe it. This is a man who has spent years driving harassment toward me and other women online. Under the circumstances, considering his pattern of behavior and everything he's put me and others through, I say garbage human was one of the kinder things I could have called him.
There you have it, Hank and Tom Green and even Mr. Campbell. There's Anita, unapologetically admitting to harassing Sargon and even being so callous as to say she could have been much harsher to them. Although she did call him a shithead prior, which I think is a greater insult than the latter. And unfortunately, Anita, since you reflexively took the question and the power you have at the panel to talk down to others, you did look fumed because you clearly didn't have a script for this, and you clearly were expecting not only your own panel to be so woefully absent, but it to be filled with people who have tried to drill counter-arguments through and through in an attempt to talk to you, not at you. So double, triple, quadruple-decker down as you will, it doesn't erase the fact of the matter that they came in with an olive branch and you turned it to ash with your fire-breathing words of hatred for ideological opponents. When fighting monsters, be careful that you yourself do not become a monster. And if you gaze long into the abyss also gazes back into you.
In the midst of this predictable flood of hate that has come my way from Carl's supporters, there have been a number of really wonderful messages of gratitude and support.
Did John McIntosh send you 15 tweets desperately trying to regain what fragmented relationship you had with him? Is that your idea of gratitude and support?
So many of us have spent so long internalizing this expectation that we don't confront this kind of abuse directly. We don't openly acknowledge it. We suffered it in silence, and these men just go on spewing their bullshit without any consequences.
Anita, who the fuck is saying this? I don't hear this from your detractors. I don't hear it from the fucking actual misogynists, the likes of Roosh V and company. So I just have to ask, if you're the only one continuing to make this claim, aren't you therefore the only example of such person saying something of such? Remember my quibble about making sure the camera you keep talking to isn't also a mirror? Maybe you just hate yourself and project your self-hatred on others. As vernacularists would say, avoid people who say, you hate me, when you know nothing of them.
As women, we're always told not to engage, not to stoke the fire, and that forces us into silence. It forces us to be quiet in the face of harassment.
Again, Anita, who is telling you this? Because as far as I know, you're the only one who keeps saying this. But in terms of engagement, there were 2 women in the crowd of said panel that had a lot of grievances against you, Anita. Aren't you silencing them from existence for the sake of making an argument that women are being silenced? Have you no irony that in order for your argument to even float on filthy bog water, that you have to actively erase women who disagree with you?
That silence helps perpetuate a culture in which harassment is permissible or even accepted as normal. And so I think that for some women who understand what I've been through or have been through it themselves, it was cathartic to see me not stay silent, to see me call him out directly like that, to acknowledge in front of all those people what he's done.
Oh, the travesty that Sargon dared analyze your talking points and your claims of harassment, and that he would dare try to encourage those not to harass you, because he knew that you'd take any advantage possible if you had harassment from him. And the irony that you claimed to be silent about it when you had a mic at the event, and in fact, they were silent, is so baffling that it's literally like the statement, I'm rubber, you're glue, whatever bounces off me sticks to you.
Sarkeesian's brief and public ownership of Benjamin is unlikely to alter the toxic dynamic of gaming's reactionary fringe.
Jesus Christ! Public ownership of Benjamin? Is Sargon Sarkeesian's house nigga now? I know you meant to say owning like she pwned him when she only pwned herself. Also, how dare gamers react to Anita making gross claims against them, apparently, but any reaction by a feminist over someone critiquing them is A-okay.
Too many people are enraptured in their own blind rage. They carry with them a curiously self-defeating notion that fairness and common decency spell their own disenfranchisement and marginalization. Their rage is considered by some to be self-validating, others see it as entertainment. To a small cadre of YouTube blowhards, it is also extremely lucrative.
Well, isn't it? This is coming from the fucking person who used the victim card to get a whopping $150K on their Kickstarter. Still up, mind you, but oh, how dare Sargon make money on Patreon for his YouTube career, huh, Mr. Campbell? Again, it's blatantly telling that Campbell doesn't give a shit what Sarkeesian does, despite she is doing the same things that he'll try to demonize the shitlords for apparently doing.
When confronted with the consequences of appalling behavior, those organizations that host abusive activities, including Vidcon, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter, offer little more than pleasantries and useless pavilities. They are ignoring their own urgent duty to show some courage to fully confront these awful displays of bullying.
Well, you'd be right in that, but not for the right reasons. Vidcon is perfectly complacent with Anita acting out as a bully and a harasser because presumably she's a victim, which justifies anything apparently. And Twitter will kick out Milo's Twitter for the actions of his fans that he didn't tell them to act on, yet Leslie Jones can keep her Twitter despite her non-sold quips against white people. It's a blatant double standard, but you're fine with it as long as it gets the right targets. There's no shitty tactics, only shitty targets.
If individuals like Anita Sarkeesian can stand up to such aggression, why can't these huge and powerful organizations?
I wonder why. Maybe because Anita is the aggression and the organizations don't want to be lambasted as horrible misogynists and other false labels to lose out on their revenue, so in a desperate attempt to keep their business afloat, capitulate to her as far as they can as she continues to demand more and more, because feminists, and bullies for that matter, aren't satisfied. It's a good thing I don't go to VidCon for this stupid shit. And it's a good thing that Sarkeesian once again reminded everyone how full of shit she is, and how incapable she is to address criticism, much less be in the presence of her critics. Well, I'm almost sure this will now surpass my longest video, which ironically was also a scam schemian video, although this was tangentially related to Sarkeesian. Anyway, that's all for this episode on Superficial Scribblings on Sexism.